Hi, I'm Dave Richardson, Dean of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Welcome back to Achebe Baldwin at 40, commemorating and interrogating the historic meeting of two acclaimed writers and intellectuals. I am sure everyone beaming in from institutions near and far is enjoying this event. This afternoon features two panels putting these groundbreaking writers into literary and historical perspective. I want to recognize especially the many students attending and participating in this program. We all look forward to the roundtable featuring several graduate students from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. It's meetings like these that put extra meaning into the term college experience, expanding the intellectual and personal horizons for students and faculty alike. It is also wonderful to see this event come together after so many months of planning. Its success is due to many strong programs and partnerships across UF, including the College of the Arts, the Center for African Studies, the African American Studies Program, the Department of English, and the Center for the Humanities and the Public Sphere. I'm proud of their work to recognize the important and impactful contributions of Black artists and scholars. Best wishes from the faculty, staff, and students of Liberal Arts and Sciences, and have a great afternoon.
When I first encountered Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, I had read several novels, most of them by European authors. It was in encountering Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart that I saw myself for the first time in a very complex, profound, and intricate way woven into this category that we call fiction. I felt that Achebe told our story, and he told it with great affection and feeling, but he didn't tell it with any particular there was no particular affectation in the telling of that story. And Achebe was a witness to history, a witness to our people's encounter with Europe and how that encounter transformed Africa in all kinds of ways, and Africa and Africans are living through the consequences of that transformation even today. And so in lieu of reading a section from his work, and I was going to read a few pages from Things Fall Apart, I'd like to just recite the opening paragraph of that novel. Okonkwo was well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. His fame rested on solid personal achievements. As a young man of 18, he had brought honor to his village by throwing Amalinze the cat. Amalinze was a great wrestler who for 7 years was unbeaten from Umuofia to Mbaino. He was called the cat because his back would never touch the earth. It was this man that Okonkwo threw in a fight which the old men agreed was one of the fiercest since the founder of their town engaged a spirit of the wilds for 7 days and 7 nights. So what I would like to end with is a short section of an essay collection by Chinua Achebe called Hopes and Impediments, one of several of Achebe's essay collections. And so the postscript of that collection is an essay that celebrated the life of James Baldwin. Achebe writes, "Since James Baldwin passed away in his adopted country, France, on the last day of November 1987, the many and varied tributes to him, like the blind man's versions of the elephant, have been consistent in one detail: the immensity, the sheer prodigality of endowment. When my writing first began to yield small rewards in the way of free travel, UNESCO came along and asked where I would like to go. Without hesitation, I said USA and Brazil. And so I came to the Americas for the first time in 1963. My intention, which was somewhat nebulous to begin with, was to find out how the Africans of the diaspora were faring in the two largest countries of the New World. In UNESCO files, however, this was stated with greater precision. I was given a fellowship to enable me to study literary trends and to meet and exchange ideas with writers. I did indeed make very useful contacts. John O. Killings, Langston Hughes, Ralph Ellison, Paul Marshall, Leroy Jones, and so on, and for good measure, Arthur Miller. They were all wonderful to me, and yet there was no way I could hide from myself or my sponsors my sense of disappointment that one particular meeting could not happen because the man concerned was away in France, and that was the year of the fire next time. Before I came to America, I have discovered and read Go Tell It on the Mountain and been instantly captivated. For me, it combined strange and familiar in a way that was entirely new. I went to the United States Information Service Library in Lagos to see what other material there might be on this man, by or on this man. There was absolutely nothing. So I offered a couple of suggestions, and such was the persuasiveness of newly independent Africans in those days that when next I looked in at the library, they had not only Baldwin, but Richard Wright as well. So that's where I'm going to end it, but I'm really looking forward to meeting all of you in Gainesville. I'm from Gainesville. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. So I look forward to this great conversation about the life and the great contributions of these two phenomenal writers, Chinua Achebe and James Baldwin, in Gainesville. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Julie Iromuanya. I'm the author of the novel Mr. and Mrs. Doctor, published by Coffee House Press in 2015. I'm based here in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm really excited to take part in this wonderful celebration of the life and work of Chinua Achebe and James Baldwin. Today I'm going to be reading a little bit to you from Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. So first of all, this is actually the book that my parents brought when they immigrated to America, and it was a book that I stumbled across first as a teenager, and I read the stories and fell in love with the novel, and so I'm really excited to be sharing a little bit with you today. The section I'm going to be reading to you focuses on Azima. Azima was a character that I found really intriguing as a teenager when I encountered her. Azima did not call her mother Nne, like all children. She called her by her name, Ekwefi, as her father and other grown-up people did. The relationship between them was not only that of mother and child, there was something in it like the companionship of equals, which was strengthened by such little conspiracies as eating eggs in the bedroom. Ekwefi had suffered a good deal in her life. She'd borne 10 children and 9 of them had died in infancy, usually before the age of 3. As she buried one child after another, her sorrow gave way to despair and then to grim resignation. The birth of her children, which should be a woman's crowning glory, became for Ekwefi mere physical agony devoid of promise. The naming ceremony after 7 market weeks became an empty ritual. Her deepening despair found expression in the names she gave her children. One of them was a pathetic cry, Onwumbiko, death, I implore you. But death took no notice. Onwumbiko died in his 15th month, The next child was a girl, Ozuomene. May it not happen again. She died in her 11th month, and 2 others after. Ekwefi then became defiant and called her next child Onwuma. Death may please himself. And he did. After the death of Ekwefi's second child, Okonkwo had gone to a medicine man who was also a diviner of the Afa oracle to inquire what was amiss. This man told him that the child was Obonje, one of those wicked children who, when they died, enter their mother's wombs to be born again. When your wife becomes pregnant again, he said, let her not sleep in your hut. Let her go and stay with her people. In that way, she will elude her wicked tormentor and break its evil cycle of birth and death. Ekwefi did as she was asked. As soon as she became pregnant, she went to live with her old mother in another village. It was there that her 3rd child was born and circumcised on the 8th day. She did not return to Okonkwo's compound until 3 days before the naming ceremony. The child was called Onwumbiko. Onwumbiko was not given proper burial when he died. Okonkwo had called in another medicine man who was famous in the clan for his great knowledge about Obonje children. His name was Akabuo Unyanwa. Akabuo was a very striking figure, tall, with a full beard and a bald head. He was light in complexion, his eyes were red and fiery. He always gnashed his teeth as he listened to those who came to consult him. He asked Okonkwo a few questions about the dead child. All the neighbors and relations who had come to mourn gathered round them. On what market day was it born? He asked. Oye, replied Okonkwo. And it died this morning? Okonkwo said yes, and only then realized for the first time that the child had died on the same market day as it had been born. The neighbors and relations also saw the coincidence and said among themselves that it was very significant. Where do you sleep with your child, in your obi or in her own hut? Asked the medicine man. In her hut. In future, call her into your obi. The medicine man then ordered that there should be no mourning for the dead child. He brought out a sharp razor from the goatskin bag slung from his left shoulder and began to mutilate the child. Then he took it away to bury in the evil forest, holding it by the ankle and dragging it on the ground behind him. After such treatment, it would think twice before coming again, unless it was one of the stubborn ones who returned, carrying the stamp of the mutilation, a missing finger, or perhaps a dark line where the medicine man's razor had cut them. By the time Onwumbiko died, Ekwefi had become a very bitter old woman. Her husband's first wife had already had 3 sons, all strong and healthy. When she had borne her 3rd son in succession, Okonkwo had gathered a goat for her, as was the custom. Ekwefi had nothing but good wishes for her. But she had grown so bitter about her own chi that she could not rejoice with others over her good fortune. And so, on the day that Mwanye's mother celebrated the birth of her 3 sons with feasting and music, Ekwefi was the only person in the happy company who went about with a cloud on her brow. Her husband's wife took this for malevolence, as husbands' wives were wont to do. How could she know that Ekwefi's bitterness did not flow outwards to others, but inwards into her own soul? That she did not blame others for their good fortune, but her own evil chi, who denied her any. At last, Azima was born, and although ailing, she seemed determined to live. Thank you so much.
Hello, I am Stanley Richardson, Poet Laureate, Alachua County, Florida, founder and director of Art Speaks, GNV, bringing poetry and people together. Art Speaks, courageous young voices, and the North Central Florida, Alachua County Youth Poet Laureate Program. I want to thank everyone at the Center for African Studies at the University of Florida for inviting me to take part in this wonderful occasion, commemorating the 40th anniversary of the meeting between Chinua Achebe and James Baldwin, 2 literary giants. I will read from James Baldwin, a book of poetry. During his lifetime, James Baldwin authored 7 novels as well as several plays and essay collections, which were published to widespread praise. These books, among them Notes of a Native Son, The Fire Next Time, Giovanni's Room, and Gold Tethered on the Mountain brought him well-deserved acclaim as a public intellectual and admiration as a writer. However, Baldwin's earliest writing was in poetic form, and Baldwin considered himself a poet throughout his lifetime. Nonetheless, his book of poetry, Jimmy's Blues, never achieved the popularity of his novels and nonfiction, and is the only one of his books to fall out of print. Inventory on Being 52 by James Baldwin. My progress report concerning my journey to the Palace of Wisdom is discouraging. I lack certain indispensable aptitudes. Furthermore, it appears that I packed the wrong things. I thought I packed what was necessary, or what little I had, but there is always something one overlooks, something one was not told or did not hear. Furthermore, some time ago, I seem to have made an error in judgment, turned this way instead of that, and now I cannot radio my position. I am not sure that my radio is working. No voice has answered me for a long time now. How long? I do not know. It may have been that day in Norman's Gardens, uptown somewhere, when I did not hear someone trying to say, I love you. I packed for the journey in great haste. I have never had any time to spare. I left behind me all that I could not carry. I seem to remember now a green bauble, a worthless stone, slimy with the rain. My mother said that I should take it with me, but I left it behind. The world is full of green stones, I said. Funny that I should think of it now. I never saw another one like it, now that I think of it. There was a red piece of altar cloth, which had belonged to my father, but I was much too old for it, and I left it behind. There was a little brown ball belonging to a neighbor's little boy. I still remember his face, brown like the ball, shining like the sun, the day he threw it to me, and I caught it and turned my back and dropped it and left it behind. I was on my way. Drums and trumpets called me. My universe was thunder. My eye was fixed on the far place of the palace. But sometimes my attention was distracted by this one or that one, by a river, by the cry of a child, the sound of chains, of howling. Sometimes the wings of great birds flailed my nostrils, veiled my face. Sometimes from high places, rocks fell on me. Sometimes I was distracted by my blood rushing over my palm, fouling the lightning of my robe. My father's son does not easily surrender. My mother's son pressed on. Then I began to imagine a strange thing. The palace never came any closer. I began nervously to check my watch, my compass, the stars. They all confirmed that I was almost certainly where I should be. The vegetation was proper for the place and the time of year. The flowers were dying, but that I knew was virtual at this altitude. It was cold, but I was walking upward toward the sun, and it was silent, but silence and I have always been friends. Yet my journey's end seemed farther than I thought it would be. I feel as though I have been badly bruised. I hope that there is no internal damage. I seem to be awakening from a long, long fall. My radio never worked again. My compass has betrayed me. My watch has stopped. Perhaps I will never find my way to the palace. Certainly, I do not know which way to turn. My progress has been discouraging. Perhaps I should locate the turning and then start back and study the road I've traveled. Oh, I was in a hurry, but it was not, after all, if I remember, an ugly road at all. Sometimes I saw wonders greater than any palace. Yes, and sometimes joy leaped out, mightier than the lightning of my robe, and kissed my nakedness. Songs came out of rocks and stones and chains. Wonder baptized me. Old trees sometimes opened and let me in, and led me along their roots down to the bottom of the rain. The green stone, the scarlet altar cloth, the brown ball, the brown boy's face, the voice in Norman's gardens trying to say, I love you. Yes, my progress has been discouraging, but I think I will leave the palace where it is. It has taken up quite enough of my time. The compass, the watch, the radio, I think I will leave them here. I think I know the road by now, and if not, well, I'll certainly think of something. Perhaps the stars will help, or the water. A stone may have something to tell me, and I owe a favor to a couple of trees. And what was that song I learned from the river? On one of those dark days. If I can remember the first few notes. Yes, I think it went something like, yes, it may have been the day I met the howling man who looked at me so strangely. He wore no coat. He said perhaps he left it at Norman's gardens, uptown somewhere. Perhaps this time, should we meet again, I'll stop and rap a little. A howling man may have discovered something I should know, something perhaps concerning my discouraging progress. This time, however, hopefully, should the voice hold me to tarry, I'll be given what to carry. Thank you.